Should I make this lower? That's perfect.
Good evening to all. We see some of you streaming in. Thanks for attending this evening session if you're here in Singapore with me. If not, then very early morning session if you're also based in Miami or in the States, just like Mera and Don. And we'll give a couple more seconds to our attendees who are streaming in before we begin. All right. Good evening to all and a warm welcome to the talk, The Rubells on Collecting. Now, this is the fifth and final talk of SEAspotlight, which is a specially curated series of panel discussions and talks organized as part of SEAfocus 2021. I'm Rachel from SEAfocus and STPI, and it is a pleasure to be in the inimitable virtual presence of our guest speakers today, Don and Mera Rubell, who are speaking to us live from Miami, Florida, where it's currently a little past 7 a.m. A very good morning to you both, Don and Mera.
Good morning. Good morning. We're a little blurry-eyed.
So before we begin, please be informed that there will be a dedicated time of Q&A towards the end of the discussion. So you're all very much encouraged to leave comments and questions in the Q&A function of this Zoom webinar. And you can find this located at the bottom bar of the platform anytime during the talk. Please allow me to provide an introduction to our speakers this evening. Mera and Don Rubell first began engaging with artists, galleries, and museums back in 1964 while living in New York. And they moved to Miami in 1992 with their son Jason and daughter Jennifer, and they began developing hotels and an art foundation and museum to house and publicly exhibit their expanding art collection. They formed Rubell Hotels and have subsequently transformed and enlivened neighborhoods on the East Coast. They helped spearhead the transformation of South Beach in the 1990s, and their first art museum opened in '93, and that did the same for the Wynwood neighborhood. The Rubells were also instrumental in bringing the Art Basel Art Fair to Miami Beach. And in December 2019, they opened the Rubell Museum, which is designed by Annabelle Selldorf. Now, the Rubells' early interactions with and support of artists have grown into this life-defining passion, and they are very intimately involved with all aspects of their 100,000 square foot contemporary art museum. And this includes creating exhibitions, working directly with artists, engaging with the public, and collaborating with museums worldwide, and much more. Now, before we enter a time of conversation with Don and Mera, who will shed greater light on their collection and collecting journey, I'll now like to walk everyone through some images of the Rubell Museum to provide some illustrative references to the breadth of what the Rubells have collected for close to, I believe, 5 to 6 decades. So just to kick us off, now we can see here some images of the Rubell Museum's facade from both the northwest and the north sort of angles. And it's located at the Alapata in Miami. And as we enter the museum, we see works from the museum's ongoing exhibition, Collection Highlights. And this includes works by Carrie James Marshall, Karen Davis, Noah Davis, and Purvis Young. And in another space, we are greeted by Yayoi Kusama's immersive installation, Infinity Mirrored Room. And here we have Maurizio Catalan's We Are the Revolution. And this is Catalan's, I guess, he references and perhaps also reverses a 1972 work by Joseph Beuys, which bears the same title. And here we have works by Ernst Fischer. We also see some greenery peeking out from the exterior of the museum. Katie Nolan's piece here, this piece has no title yet, and it fills this part of the museum with boxes, steel scaffolding, flags, and these stacked Budweiser 6-packs. In another part of the ongoing exhibition, Collection Highlights, we have works by Cindy Sherman, Robert Lango, and Louise Lawler. And here, Genesis Tremaine's incredibly powerful paintings, God Gave Me a Song, as well as Vessel of Psalm. And here, Dance Naked by Damien Hirst, with the surgical equipment and also plastic skeletons that are housed within a steel and glass display case. And really iconic photographic prints by Zhang Huan feature on the left of this room. We have To Raise the Water Level in a Fish Pond on the left, and beside it, 12 square meters. And in another space, Kehinde Wiley's massive painting on the left, as well as a work by Gilbert and George, Finding God, on the right. Now, Wiley is probably very well known and catapulted to global fame for his portrait of Barack Obama, which was commissioned by the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery back in 2017. And in between these two works, we see a glimpse of a Keith Haring painting. And we see that here alongside other works by Haring, an artist whom Mera and Don have been collecting since he first began his career back in 1980. We also encounter sculptures and paintings by Takashi Murakami, here featuring his iconic DOB character alongside his little whimsical, multi-eyed sort of mushroom figures. And we have also works by Yoshitomo Nara, another prominent Japanese artist, also associated with the Superflat movement or group. And I think we could, really go on and on, but I'm sure our audiences are really looking forward to hearing directly from the Rubells at this point. So, Don and Mera, thanks again for being here. And to start us off, perhaps we should take everyone right back to the very beginning. How did your story with collecting begin? Back in the 60s, what prompted or motivated you to begin collecting, and where did this practice begin?
Good morning. It's so nice to be here, and I just want to say hello to all the friends that we've made over the years, traveling to various places around the world. We never realized what a privilege that was until this lockdown. So it's we will imagine that we're having these beautiful, delicious Singapore.
I remember Singapore sling mash rather than what we.
Now, all the beautiful food and delicious meals that we had across the globe.
By the way, you still have the fish market right outside of Sing. Delicious fish, fresh.
Anyway, we're here. We are in Miami. A little bit of a lockdown, even though our museum we launched our museum in December for a beautiful grand opening, and Dior was a wonderful sponsor. So we opened with that, and then we unfortunately had to shut it down for 3 months, but we reopened July 1st, and we also launched a restaurant, the Le Coup restaurant, in our indigenous garden that our director so beautifully curated with some local Everglades landscape architects. So we are open. Fortunately, we have enough space to give everyone a safe oasis. And I think people come to realize how much we miss art and how important, what an impact it has on our lives not having it. And I think it's interesting that people arrive and say, oh my God, this is my first outing after all these months. And I just was desperate to visit art and experience. It's a kind of sanctuary for us. What's the question? How we started?
How we started. I was wondering what you...
I'm sorry, okay.
That's right. But that was a very well-needed introduction.
Well, we started with our life, really. Don and I met, I guess, 59 years ago. 60 years ago.
So long we don't remember.
But in any case, it started, Don was in medical school. I was a Head Start teacher. We were living on my $100 a week salary as a teacher, and we were living in New York.
But actually what happened, it started like all art serendipitously. We would take breaks from studying by wandering around the neighborhood. And in those days, New York was in the midst of one of its fairly frequent recessions, and the artists were able to rent storefronts.
And live and work in the storefronts.
Live illegally and paint there. And what we took to stopping in these storefronts and asking the artists, if we might step in and take a look, which of course they were very happy to.
At some point, the artists they come around to saying, well, you're visiting us, we're enjoying each other's company, but what about acquiring one of our works? And we laughed because on my $100 salary, that was an impossibility. But interestingly enough, they said, well, what can you afford? And jokingly, I said, well, what about 5% of our weekly income, which was 5% was $5, that we went up to 25% of our income. So we ended up spending $25 a week on a payment plan. And it's an interesting, it gave us a roadmap to the way to collect art, which is providing you can create the kind of trust that you need between the artist and the gallerist. The voted collector, regardless of how much money you have, hasn't come around to saying, would you trust a kind of payment plan? And in our case, it was really extreme. And it started with $5 a week to 5 artists.
But after 57 years, we've only had 2 weeks, which we had when we haven't owed the all world some payment plan.
So it continues. And I just, so really we are very grateful to the trusting artists, the relationships with all the gallerists. We always try to buy art we always buy from gallerists as it happens. In those days, of course, we bought directly from the artists. The only other time that we actually bought directly from the artists was when we traveled to China, before there really was a kind of gallery system. But, gallerists are powerful supporting structures for the survival of artists, the whole art system. And of course, and then we started traveling to art fairs all over the world. And we've been to Singapore, we've been to Beijing, we've been to, obviously Basel, Switzerland every year. So
actually, we don't take regular vacations. We only go looking for art.
Well, I don't know what a vacation is for us. Life, the art is so integrated into our life that our work, our art are also integrated. We tell our grandchildren all the time, if you're blessed, if your leisure and your work all integrate into each other. So, our hotels, we travel for hotels, but then, in our hotels, we've had art fairs there. We've had commissioned artists to do thousands of works to hang in our hotels. So our life is pretty integrated, and we feel very blessed for it. I mean,
that's a rather complicated answer to a short question. But
in any case, we started with finding each other somehow in the Brooklyn College Library. Should I tell them that you proposed to me the first time you spoke to me because you were too shy to take it any further? He said, let me just get it over with.
It was the only way I could get in a word edgewise to propose.
Well, we sat opposite each other on this big table for 3 months. In those days, I would study, I had my regular spot in the library. Don had already graduated from college. He sat opposite me. And after 3 months of not saying a word, because he was a math major, he's one of these, he was at those days shyer than he is today. And he's so, I don't know, we kind of got to know each other, but not verbally. And I guess we both fell in love with each other. And Don then said, well, would you take a walk and have a vanilla cream with me? And the next thing I know, the minute we stepped out of the library, he said, would you marry me?
Actually, I couldn't think of anything else to say, and that seemed like a very good thing to say.
And insanely, I said yes, because I was like, wow, I didn't even think he was interested. But anyway, you don't want to. This is a subject that life just happens. So the long journeys begin with the first step. An old Chinese proverb, right? We started buying those works from those retail spaces. artists that never became particularly famous. I mean, had we gone to another neighborhood, we would have run into John's, we would have run into, we would have run into Rauschenberg. But of course, Rauschenberg and John's was selling for $900. We were buying art for $25. So, we would buy for a work of art and I'd sell $100. So $900 was like $1 million today. So anyway, those are early artists. It's not like they became famous, but it doesn't matter. They were talented and amazing.
We still have the work.
And we still have the work.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, that actually leads very nicely to the next question. And it's really fascinating how global your collecting journey and perspective is. And, you talked a little bit about how galleries play this very key infrastructural role in everything. But let's talk a little bit more about the artists. You have amassed, no less than 7,200 works by over 1,000 artists. And how would you describe your approach to, discovering and collecting from artists? And would you also say there is this strong synergy between the both of you when it comes to, I guess, identifying works of art that you admire and connect with?
The artists make work, we don't make work, so that we always go to the work. And so much of our finding depends on the gallerists, the journals, finding work in journals, now looking at it online, although I have to tell you, there's nothing more frustrating than looking at art online. But the single most important thing for us is to go where the work is made. I think it helps enormously to understand the cultural milieu that the work is made. And so we've, at this point, have traveled over 3 million miles on airplanes just to go look at work. And I think the minute you see a work and you see the artist in his environment and you speak to him,
or her,
him is a non-gender specific.
They.
You understand the work and you understand the relevance of the work.
Well, we from the very beginning, I think we were, first of all, entering all those studios over so many years. It gave us a way to communicate. It taught us really how to communicate about the work and to learn about the work. And of course, the more we knew about an artist, the more we, since all the art, for the most part, that we purchase is very young, or let's say unknown. There are no references. It's not like we can, today you can Google artists, and even the earliest of careers are you can get some information. But when you don't have information, the only thing that guides you is your relationship. You're getting to know the person that's making the art, and there's so much to be learned from that. At least look, in the 1,000 artists in our collection. We've probably met 99.9, but that's not to say that we don't collect artists that we don't know. But for the most part, we buy art that is young and that does not have a pedigree, that has no consensus in the world. So we have to depend on our observations, on our relationships, getting to know the artist, traveling to the artist, as Don says, traveling to the artist. Traveling to that gallery that takes us to the artist, getting to know. Also, the reason I emphasize artists so much for us is that the artist is local. The gallerist is local. The gallerist is a devoted art person who knows the community, who knows who's come to know the artist. So it's a tremendous. It gives us direction where to even begin. So when we come into a city, even before we get there, we'll connect with the community and find out, like when we first traveled to China, it was Jean Wan who took us to meet, all the intellectuals and the people that knew the artist, even when there wasn't a gallery system. But in every city that we come to, this is our source, and often we meet those people at art fairs. We meet the gallerist, and then we'll ask the gallerist, who are the young artists you're taking on? What's happening in the city that has not emerged yet that you're exploring? So we become part of their exploration, and they know to depend on us for their exploration, because often gallerists will take us to get studios of artists that they haven't yet committed to showing, but it's a way for us to, discuss, what we're, what we see and so on. But
you can't.
But then we should say that we only buy when we agree, and
we never agree.
Yeah, we never agree.
It's amazing we
But
have any words.
inside the argument is a consensus building that really helps us, commit. Because by the time we all commit, and I say all because at a certain point, our son very early on, we have a daughter who's an artist, but our son is a collector. And very early on, he became a collector. And so his consensus incorporated into ours is essential for every piece that we collect. And the fighting, well, I say fighting, sometimes it is a fight. Sometimes it's like it goes on, and sometimes.
Not sometimes, actually, it's always a fight.
You can be married for 56 years and be completely continue to be different, with a different point of view, a different opinion. But when you throw that into the mix of what it takes to finally agree to buy a work of art, we are all in. We're in because we take each other's arguments seriously. At least we listen to each other.
We understated one thing I think that's very important, and even more important now when we're all looking at internet images, and that's the art fair. When you go to an art fair, I can go to an art fair and one day I could see the best gallerists in Zimbabwe and the best gallerists in Singapore and the best gallerists in Beijing. And that gallerist will show you live, active pieces, real pieces, and will not only show you, but will spend a lot of time talking to you. And often our journeys start at the art fair. We'll go to an art fair, we'll say, this is kind of interesting. All of a sudden we're seeing interesting work coming out of Bucharest, or interesting, and then we'll go to Bucharest, and then we'll try and sort it out once we get there.
We actually have not been to Bucharest, just to say.
I know. I picked Bucharest because we haven't been there. We're not giving any trade secrets away.
I think that is the saddest thing right now is that it stopped our travel because, just getting into, the plane, getting into the vans and we've been on bicycle. There's nothing like, getting on a bicycle and exploring art, let's say in Munster, Germany. There's nothing like, running to LA, once a month to see, because we can't miss the exhibitions and the museums. Like we can't miss the Hammer, for example, the Hammer Museum. We can't miss the Studio Museum in Harlem. We can't miss, and of course, in the 80s, we used to run to Cologne literally every 2 months. We were in Cologne, sometimes every month, because we could not miss those exhibitions. We couldn't miss Katharina Frisch. We couldn't miss Thomas Schutte. We couldn't. So these are, again, this is about, and somehow the two of us, Don being a doctor, me being a teacher, then I went on to, other professions. I went into, I think out of necessity, I ended up going into real estate. Fortunately, I did that because between Don's medical salary at some point and my real estate salary earnings, we were able to, have enough financial success to afford more. And
so we spent it.
And so, but I do want to say, did I say that now it's about it's been a consensus for a long time between Don, myself, our son Jason. Our daughter chose on her own. She absolutely refuses to participate in the actual selection. She feels like being an artist, she may be overly critical, overly, focused. So she thinks that the three of us are a better collecting team than. And of course, our director, Juan Munoz, who's been with us for 22 years, he makes an enormous contribution once the art gets into the museum, in terms of the curation inside the museum, in terms of all the research that goes into it, and of course the publications, because we do catalogs on all those shows that we do. What we then do, as we collect, like exhibitions emerge, meaning we curate exhibitions which we then feature in our own museum, and we also travel all over the world. And one exhibition that we are particularly proud of is the 30 Americans. At some point we said, oh my God, look at all the African-American art we have collected over, 30, 40 years. And that was actually 50, so now almost 15 years ago that we came to that realization and put together an exhibition called 30 Americans, which was all African-American artists. And that exhibition has been traveling to, now it's up to 20 museums around the United States, including some of the major institutions. And I'm proud to say that I think the Obama family saw the Kehinde Wiley, as Don mentioned, for the first time at the Cochran Museum in Washington. They saw that exhibition. I suspect that maybe this is where he was introduced to Kehinde Wiley, that very piece that you see called Sleep.
But even these exhibitions are a learning process, because the exhibitions usually start with one or two artists, or three or four or five artists that have somehow come under our radar. And using that as a stepping off stone, we'll then investigate other artists in the same genre. So that with the 30 Americans, we may have started with 5, 8 artists originally, but that leads to a deeper investigation into the artist. And one artist will mention another artist, or one gallerist will mention another gallerist, and it allows us to go much deeper into the process.
I think these, I guess we should say that we only exhibit work that's in our collection. And people say, well, why is that? It's because the exhibition space, the public, it's all about us continuing. It gives us a direction and a focus to collect. So
also people understand that if we show it, we're committed to it. We haven't borrowed it from anywhere. It's something we've absolutely committed.
But that's not to say, there are brilliant shows that curators put together in museums all over the world. I'm just saying we essentially, our whole mission is to continue enjoying the life that we have as collectors. And at some point, we decided to share it with the public. And because we decided to share it with the public, and that kind of happened very gradually, and I can say that probably happened when we started having the public come into our townhouse in New York, when we lived in New York after the Whitney Biennial, for people to, to celebrate. And we understood the power of having the public engaging and looking at what we do, because it makes us work harder. It makes us want to bring, I guess maybe it's a way of sharing. It's communicating. The public gives us the feedback that the public gives us from first coming into our homes and then coming now to our museum. It feeds our collecting. It motivates us. It engages us. We make friends. I'm sure that there are people out there watching that have been to, our home or our old museum. We were for 28 years, we were in Wynwood, Miami, and then Miami. And then, okay, well, I'm sorry, that's a long answer to a question. We should let you ask another question.
Yeah, but we can definitely return to that later. This idea of public engagement and possibly the shift also from Wynwood over to the new location. But I would want to perhaps ask a question on collecting motivations. You've collected for nearly 60 years, and throughout this time and looking back, what would you say are the important collecting motivations, strategies, or values that endure till today? And why do they remain important to you?
I think it's more about the artist. These are the most interesting, the brightest, the most creative, the most original people. And if you have the privilege of meeting them and seeing how they feel and what their output is, the question should be not, how do you maintain this? But why would you ever do anything else but look at art?
Well, I think we collect for very, very selfish reasons. I just can't even imagine my life without it. Meaning, it just feels like it feeds me. I often say that if it wasn't for art, I'd probably need much more therapy. If it wasn't for art, I'd probably
more therapy. I didn't know you
I don't have any. But I mean, I just feel like there is I think the art that we come, the art is constantly opening new windows, not only into the world, somebody else's world, but through the art, the great artists really are intimately sharing, intimately discussing, intimately infinitely challenging ideas, which often are issues either in your life or in the world. And I don't think that it just gave me, I often think that, for example, I watched teenagers engage with art. The conversations that you can have, the catalyst that art can have, it can be for conversations, whether it's about drugs, whether it's about sex, whether it's about crime, whether it's about incest, whether it's like all the issues that are in the world, great artists deal with. Art, one of the things we have to eliminate the notion of is that art is some, you know, dumb, mindless decoration that, you know, matches the couch. Yeah, you do put it over the couch. Yes, it has a beautiful aestheticness to it, but the great art really deals with the issues that we as individuals really deal with.
Mm. I heard a good question from a very young person.
It's not here, it's funny, it's from someone else out there who has their mic on.
You know, people often ask us, is this person collecting art for the right reasons? Or are these hedge fund people really, you know, doing it for the right reasons? The incredible thing about art is that no matter what the reasons people started, very quickly they're so caught up in the magic of it that it becomes the right reasons.
Watch when their children all of a sudden become engaged, and it actually gives the kids a new perspective on their own life. I often think the kids that fall into so much trouble, it's almost like they think they're alone in the world. They think that they're the only ones that have the issues that they're confronting in their own life. It's such an exciting, it's such an intimate way to deal with your own life.
Yeah, thanks so much for that reflection. Actually, that's a lot to think about. And I also wanted to perhaps go back to well, kind of thinking again about your collecting journey, but also thinking about some of these memorable moments and milestones throughout it. Would you like to share any of these interesting anecdotes, be it, you know, visits to artist studios or memorable encounters, you know, with public exhibitions? What are some of these memorable moments in your collecting journey that you'd like to share with others?
Actually, one that I always think about is Keith Haring. I don't know, maybe 1978. We had heard that a disco of all places had a
it was at the on top of the mud, in the building where the mud club was.
Yeah, they had an interesting exhibition, and we walked in, and it was an exhibition of graffiti, and there was this kind of strange but interesting looking character sitting there on a swing. And
you know, I just want to say, I think that somebody's mic is on, or that you might want to turn off.
Yeah, let's take a look.
So you know,
but Don, Keith Haring's story is it's not often that you meet an artist on the first day, and unfortunately, because of his young life, we were there on the last day. That's
a summary of the story.
That's a summary of the story, because it's a long story. But we literally knew Keith from the first day to the last day, because Don, we were there the night before Keith passed away. And we were there when he called us and said, I am dying. I have only, you know, probably only a month to live. And I want to celebrate with your family because you've been there with me. And can you join us in Düsseldorf? We were in New York having lunch together when he told us he was dying. Imagine a person in his 20s having the wherewithal to take on death, and with such dignity, with such calm, with such destiny. And he said, I'm about to die, and I want you and your family to join me in Düsseldorf to celebrate with other friends from around the world who will meet us in Düsseldorf to have a final dinner together.
And so it's not an art story, it's a human story.
It's a human story. So when
the best stories in art are always human stories.
Yeah. So this was a human connection. We bought the first work he ever made at the Tony Shafrazi Gallery. The heart, which you walk in on in the new museum, you walk in on the spine that has 700 Kusama spheres called Narcissus. And in the very end, you see the Keith Haring heart, and it's as fresh as it was made yesterday.
It's hard to appreciate, but it's actually 16 foot by 16 foot toppling.
And so there's the first, that and the Statue of Liberty we bought out of the Tony Shafrati first exhibition ever.
But
So
if you ask about exhibitions, probably the single most important exhibition for us in our collecting journey has been Paul Schimmel's show at LA MoCA called Helter Skelter. And it introduced the world to artists like Charlie Ray,
Paul McCarthy,
Mike Kelly. It's just an endless list of great artists.
It was 20, it was like probably 20 years of LA art that was simply under the radar, and bringing all the power of American vision, artistic vision, into a single exhibition. And we were there for it, and it blew us away. And we became very committed to LA art. We have hundreds of works by LA artists, and we continue to celebrate those artists, like with the latest being artists like Carrie Upson,
Karan
Davis.
It's an endless source of talented artists.
Yeah. So,
and even artists from other, Simpaway Njidi from Africa, we saw in LA.
So even it actually,
Sterling Ruby was LA.
Well, Thomas Hastigo, who English, leads, comes to LA. So LA is an endless source for us.
Yeah, and this idea.
But we can tell you stories how we first met Jean-Michel Basquiat in the basement of Anina Nozai. But it was Keith Haring who said to us, the greatest artist alive is my friend Jean-Michel Basquiat. We try to, he takes us to the one day during, at midnight one night, we take the subway all the way up to Harlem, and we go to an abandoned station to meet Jean-Michel Basquiat. We had just missed him. He was also a tagger. He was already out there, doing his thing in the subways. So then, he sent us to Nina Nozai's basement. We then meet Jean-Michel Basquiat. We buy this incredible painting called Bird on Money in this basement. It's on and on and on. It's just on and on and on. Meeting Cindy Sherman at the artist space, Richard Prince, Robert Longo, Jeff Koons. Okay, Jeff Koons comes to one of our Whitney Biennial parties. He shows up a day late. He comes the night after the party, rings our bell and says, "I'm here for the party." So I ring, I said, "Wait a minute, who are you?" He says, Jeff who? Jeff Koons. Well, Jeff, who are you? He says, "Well, I'm an artist and I'm here for the Whitney Biennial." I said, "If it was the Whitney Biennial party yesterday, you wouldn't need to ring our bell because there were hundreds of people. There's never an invitation. Everyone just comes. It's kind of a,
we had him come in for dinner anyway.
We had him come in for dinner, and the next morning he sent us one of his beautiful inflatable flowers because it was probably cheaper than going out and buying a fresh bouquet of flowers. So anyway, these are beautiful, beautiful human stories that our life is really enriched, not only our life, but our life, our children's life, our grandchildren. To, each artist brings a universe of new ideas, new inspirations, new way of living, new way of thinking about things. They see, what the thing is that artists see the invisible. They see things that are right in front of us, but they make us focus. They make us see the invisible. And the invisible, the answer is often in the invisible, not what is obvious and what everyone else is thinking about or looking at. So it gives new possibilities for your own life, because you need new possibilities, because sometimes the old possibilities are, dead ends. And so we become desperate, or we become lonely, or we become like, we think we're, no exit, no future, and artists open those possibilities for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't agree more. And I think, this idea of interconnectedness, which you've touched on a lot, and also this idea of commitment. Patronage has been something that existed for a long time, from feudal Japan to medieval Europe to the Renaissance, and even, the traditional Southeast Asian kingdoms. And fast forward till today. Do you feel like the role of the collector or the patron has sort of evolved over time or transformed in recent times? And perhaps, has it taken on new significances or even new social responsibilities?
The patron is such a terrible word. I hate that word.
Why you hate that word?
Because it's not,
Yeah.
it's not patronage. It's the idea to be living with magic. It's we almost never commit to a single work because, but we're in a unique position. We feel in the museum, it's important that the visitor gets to see not one work of an artist, but the sum total, or at least as close as we can come to what the creative efforts of this artist are. And not only will we collect at that one sitting as much, but we'll continue to collect as long
I
as
guess
we
what
can.
you hate about the word patronage is it's not like we are, we're not, the artist it's not like,
It's not a one-way street.
no, it's not,
You're not just giving
we're not,
the artist
it's not
something.
about
The artist-
giving, we are getting,
The
we
artist
are
gives
getting.
us much more than we'll ever get.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like our support gives the artist, the artist would be making art whether we were there or not, because that's what art, if you're born an artist, you just can't help yourself. You have to make the work. So we're really selfishly engaged in being part of that artist world. So we are patronizing ourselves in a way. I mean, that we can enter this universe, that we can
Yeah,
own
that's a good
that
one.
work, that we can share it. It's a privilege. Look, it's a privilege to be able to collect the art, to show the art, to have a museum that we can somehow financially support. To engage with the public is a privilege to us. It's a huge privilege to us.
Rather than us generously supporting the artist, I see their generosity in allowing us to find magic works that they make.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And at this point, I'd like to just remind our audiences we do have a dedicated time towards the end of this segment just for Q&A. So please feel free to leave your questions down in the Q&A function on the bottom bar. And now, Don and Mera, I'd like to return to this point that you briefly touched on earlier, how your collecting practice has sort of evolved over time, and perhaps in particular, if you could also frame this with the kind of inauguration and rebranding of the Rubell Museum in recent times, the move from the warehouse in Wynwood to the current Alapata neighborhood.
I think that the first major shift in our collecting was originally we would buy the work of an artist. That's terrific. We now have the work of an artist.
We buy one work.
We buy one work. I think with the museum and with the public being involved so intimately, we now feel much more strongly that you should, when you find an artist whose work is terrific, I think we should go all out to have as much work as we possibly can.
Well, we also do now the residencies.
And allow our public to see it. And now Mera's mentioning the residencies, which you can, it's a further step in this process.
Well, the residency, it started with actually Sterling Ruby, who came to, we had this beautiful, the old space in Wynwood, we had this beautiful, it was a 30 by 30 foot room, a magnificent 30 by 30 foot room, and with high ceilings. And Sterling Ruby came to us and said, I would like to make 4 outrageous paintings for this room. And we already had his work. He was in our original LA Red Eye show. And so, yeah, we knew his work and we thought, wow, that's a great idea. And up to that time, we had never really commissioned a work of art. So that was a kind of commission in the form of, again, a residency commission, this idea of saying to an artist, here's the budget and make the work. So that was what he made was unbelievable. It was like, it was the biggest, amazing work. Like, I think there were 26-foot paintings that were just like awesome of LA landscape, of the LA landscape. And that was the beginning. After Sterling Ruby came Oscar Murillo, we had Oscar, the last one was Mwako from Africa. We also had Jonathan Lyndon Chase. We had, Don, help me. I'm having a senior moment. Wait a minute. We had, anyway, so since then, this is already like maybe 10 years ago. So every year we have the most incredible, Lucy Dodd, I couldn't think, Lucy Dodd, Jonathan Lyndon Chase, as I said, Cy Gavin, incredible artwork. And Mwako, all the way from Africa, came and did incredible. Last year we had Genesis Tremaine. She made 8 of the most drop-dead paintings. Now, in each case, when they come to do residency, we hope that the inside, and it's not just a residency where we give them a room and that's it. They're working inside a museum. They're connecting with our staff has to engage. I mean, by the way, with Tremaine, Genesis Tremaine, this was during pandemic. The museum was shut down, and the only connection that we really had with the art was with this artist in residence. It was really, really meaningful. So
every artist has a dream, and there are certain limitations. And what we try and do is give them an opportunity to do their dream work. The things they've always wanted to do for whatever reason. It may have to do with scale, it may have to do form, it may have to do structure, well, maybe. Whatever it is, we say, you're here, and we'll cooperate in every way possible. Our staff works very intimately.
The staff is critical in this process.
We eat dinners together all the time.
And we really get to know each other. They really join our museum family. If it wasn't for the cooperation of the kind of collaboration with and generosity of our director Juan and Laura and the staff, our team, of course, Juan has been with us 22 years. He knows that anyway, this is something that it's a museum. And now it's an effort by the entire team to welcome an artist to make their work.
And we've been very fortunate because in almost every instance, the artist did something which they haven't done before that ended up being a step up their ladder.
Alison Zuckerman, I think she made 30 works when she was here. Oscar made now the only condition is that whatever the work they make here stays here. And we give them a budget and they run with it.
Which they always exceed, which is all right also.
So it's very exciting. And of course, as we walk around and see the work that was actually made in our museum, there's a very, very special connection to the work and to the artists, especially when these artists do their best, and they always do. So it's wonderful. I don't want to fail to mention that the Knight Foundation, which is a local organization, has been very generous in helping us support this residency effort. The Knight Foundation.
As usual, we've not quite answered your question, but we've come as close as we can.
No, I always appreciate that you segue to a much wider story because that gives us context. And thank you so much for this very wonderful insights to your collection, Don and Mera. I think our audiences have all waited with bated breath to have some of their questions answered. So we'll now open up this time to Q&A from the floor. Let's begin with the first question. I think this sort of extends from an earlier point you made about working with, possibly challenging setups for works and display. So there's a question on how you manage to collect such different media. It requires so much different expertise in terms of hanging and display, and isn't it challenging to stay on top of it all?
Poor Juan. Juan always says yes, which is amazing.
Juan, our director, the day he says, no, this is impossible, I think we'll stop. But as long as he takes on the impossible, we do it. We have not yet purchased the work or that he said, this is out of the realm of possibility. Even when we went to China and brought, we have paintings by that weigh 1,000 pounds each painting. by Don, help me.
Zushinji.
Amazing. The paint is so heavy. It's 1,000 pounds per painting, and it's a triptych. And he figures out how to handle it.
But I think it has to do more with our relationship to art. To us, the artist is the most essential part of the formula. And whatever they make, it's not our job to say make a painting
but
that's 4 feet by 5 feet. They make what they want, and we're crazy enough to want what they make.
But Don, what it also does for us, like I remember when we first bought Charlie or Charlie by Charles Ray. So we never even thought that it wasn't going to fit. I really think that one of the reasons, I mean, this is crazy, but one of the reasons that we ended up moving to Florida is we bought the Charles Ray, the Charlie or Charlie, the self-portrait of himself in 8 figures, right? Floor sculpture. It never occurred to us that it wouldn't fit into our living room in Miami and in New York at that time. We just didn't, because we didn't realize it's not just the size of the room. Is the window big enough? Is the door big enough? Do you need a forklift? You need machinery to move art. I really think that sculpture forced us to think, oh my God, we better rethink. We ended up buying a former drug and weapon confiscation center, 40,000 square feet in Miami, to accommodate this Charles Ray. That's what's happened along.
That's the story. That's the story. We always move when we buy a piece that's too big to fit in.
Exactly.
And even now, we're moving from the 40,000 feet that we had to now 100,000 feet facility, is because the 40 did not afford us the opportunity to show everything.
It also didn't have enough floating bays. Like to move into the way we collect, okay, you need to think forklifts, you need to think loading bays. Like in the former drug and weapon confiscation building that we had, we didn't have a loading dock. Now, do you know what it means to move a 1,000-pound painting without a loading bay? It's dangerous.
Actually, if you're looking for a practical solution to that question, you are speaking to the wrong people.
Look, when I say artists open your imagination, they also challenge you to, be more courageous in your own life. So
continuing the tradition of not answering the question I was asked, that's as much as we could say.
We ended up, we ended up with going to a neighborhood, even though it was just 1 mile away. We never went there because it was all produce and food warehousing. We ended up with purchasing very cheap, very, very cheap, because it was, it was a bean storage warehouse, right? We ended up with 8 connecting warehouses on the railroad track. And we thought, well, that's a great storage, because we're thinking we always need storage. So the storage opened our imagination. So we said, that's a great storage space. And then when we walked in around these 8 buildings, we thought, wow, that's not storage. What if it became a museum? And then, of course, we brought Annabelle Selldorf down, and she said, oh my God, I'll just put a spine, connect all these buildings, and you're going to have a new museum. And we thought, oh, so there you go. There you go. Interestingly enough, we had acquired a Carl Andre that needed a space 60 by 60 feet, okay? No columns. And before, we had a space 60 by 60, but it had 1 column space. So we waited 30 years, okay? We waited 30 years to have a space that's 60 by 60 feet without a column. Because when we originally brought Carl Andre to our house in New York, and we had another Carl Andre, we ran the piece under our dining room table. And when Carl Andre saw that piece under the table, he was very polite, and he didn't say anything. But then we said, what? Well, what's disturbing you? Well, he said, maybe one of these days you could think about not having my piece run under the table. And I thought, anyways, we learned that you're better off not installing a work if it's going to be installed improperly, that you really, work needs the sanctity of space. And as a collector, you owe it to the work to make sure that it's presented in a way that the artist would find acceptable, and that it's right for the work. So anyway, we ended up with a new, 7 buildings connecting, Annabelle Selldorf. And by the way, all of this pushes us financially beyond where we should go. I mean, it's beyond our imagination, because how are we going to do this? How is this possible? How can we make this happen? And miraculously, then we go into this just to take this a little further, not
Please
to
go
expand your question. So then we go into this Alapatha neighborhood where we found on the railroad tracks, and then we see this building across the street, and we say, "Oh my God, what if the wrong neighbor moves into this empty building at some point, and we have the worst neighbor? Is it possible for us to now affect the neighborhood itself? Can we what can we do to create maybe a cultural zone of some sort?" So somehow, because we have a great bank that we work with, we go there, we explain what we're thinking, and they see our vision, they accept our vision. I mean, go figure, Bank America said to us, "We respect your vision. If you want to purchase this building too, go ahead." So thank you, Bank America, because of Bank America financing that building, we ended up with now Super Blue, the new incredible experiential, an extraordinary, Miami is going to, Miami doesn't even realize what's coming in the next 2 months with Super Blue.
Okay, so, we'll let you ask
wow.
another question.
That's so exciting. No, it's really incredible to hear that. And I think, okay, let's look at the next question. So we have a question here that both of you are also known for your passion for collecting young Black and Latino artists, not just collecting their work, but also organizing solo presentations of artists like Oscar Murillo and Hernan Bas. Could you speak about your motivations and why you find their works interesting?
First off, I want to say that we don't collect Black or Latino artists as a goal. We don't collect women, we don't collect Black, we don't collect Leipzig. We collect them because they're interesting artists. And that's really our only goal, is to collect interesting artists.
Well,
my answer was short.
No, I mean, we first of all, you asked about Hernan Bas. We have now, we have 2 beautiful galleries of about, I don't know, 45, 50 works. He worked at our collection when he was, he is from Miami. He grew up in Florida, and he was, I guess, an intern at first, and then he was a graduate of the New World School, an amazing school in Miami. And we started collecting his work when he was actually still working for us. And over the years, we collected a lot of the work. And at some point, we did an exhibition of his work. He ended up with a solo exhibition at the Brooklyn Museum. When we do these exhibitions, we also, I should mention, which I'm very proud of this, we somehow also managed to do publications. We do our own publishing. And we try to do catalogs with our exhibitions. So we have a catalog on Hernan Bas, Oscar Murillo,
30 Americans.
Keith Haring. I mean, on and on and on. We do catalogs. And Hernan, both Keith Haring and Hernan Bas were gay men before it was acceptable to be publicly gay. I mean, it was hard growing up as a gay person. It was hard coming out. Parents didn't accept it. Society didn't accept it. So this was, his work deals with a very emotional, inside of his work is a very emotional, what you see in the work is the emotional coming out of a young man being gay. It was just it was powerful
work. But it's all about his ability to communicate the issues that he had, and the successful communication. And that's really the reason why.
It's not just the story. It's like you combine the talent and the story, and it's very powerful. So that's the story with Hernan. Oscar, that's a whole, I mean, Oscar is incredible.
A very funny story, but unfortunately it's a long story.
It's also a long story. But at the end of the day, Oscar is a young man from Colombia whose family moves to Colombia. The story is compelling, but let's say it's interesting that artists do have compelling stories. But unfortunately, the compelling story can be in music, it can be in writing, it can be a compelling story that no one ever knows about, that you simply live. But in the case of the artist,
It's the ability to
to
communicate that
compelling
story
story.
and to make a rich
Uh,
milieu around that story.
It's an incredible, when the story and the talent come together, it's very, very powerful. In the case of Oscar Murillo, you know, this is a poor kid, poor family, out of desperation, moved to London.
But never buy
know,
never buy the story.
story. But
it's really
it's
the art
compelling.
that matters.
Look, except that the world will always know, you know, that Van Gogh cut his ear off is something that people will always, it's part of the story, but the story
But
is,
a lot of people have cut their ears off
and
without talent, and no one knows who they are.
But let's put it this, in our home, I have to share this with you.
No.
It came to pass, okay, that when Oscar was a resident in our museum, we somehow, the family of the plantation that his family lived on in Colombia, okay, happened to have a residence in Miami. And some Colombian people that we knew put that together between where he was and so. So here's now an artist, an accomplished artist doing a residency in our space, in our living room, meeting face to face, okay, with the owner of the plantation that his family worked at, where his grandfather cut a sugar cane with a machete. I think a lot of that work has the action of a machete in the work. The way he uses a broom to make a mark on that painting, in a way, is almost like a machete cutting the sugar cane. That's
an example of how good Mera's imagination is.
No, I mean,
I've never heard that connection.
But it's crazy that somehow, and then as Oscar meets him, well, I just want to finish. So as Oscar meets this man, the master of this plantation, the plantation owner then says to him, Oscar, I want you to, I'm opening a school for children of the workers, of the plantation workers, and I want you to do a mural for my school. So think about, you see, I mean, this is where life comes together with art. It's unbelievable. And so Oscar, actually, I think he executes this incredible painting for this new school for the workers in the plantation.
But anyway, next question.
No, that was really generous. I mean, I think we're able to hear these stories that are also living on through you, Mera and Don. And I guess the final question we have from the audience, because we've overrun the session a little bit, the final question is, how has the pandemic and viewing art online changed the way that you collect? And I know, Don, you mentioned a bit of an aversion towards acquiring virtually earlier. Would you like to share on that a little more?
It's actually been awful. The relationship between what you see online and the actual object, they're identical, except some of the magic has been lost in most cases. And probably the most you could say is it intrigues you and you then follow it, but you have to do 5 times the research. You have to see everything they've done to get any idea what the actual object is, what the object feels like. You lose the hand of the artist. And in addition, there is now art being made that's specifically generated for the internet. Vibrant colors, large gestures that may or may not be as interesting. I mean, I spent yesterday afternoon calling a group of gallerists in Los Angeles and New York to be curious what's interesting. But I know in my heart of hearts, I'll never know how interesting something is that I don't know anything about until you actually see the work.
Don, I think that we have to, hopefully, hopefully we leave our, soon we'll go back to actually engaging with the world the way we knew before. But in the meantime, I think it does challenge us to become, more knowledgeable and figuring out how to meet artists in a different way. So we have begun to do Zoom studio calls with artists. And I have to say, Don, it's better. I mean, it's getting better. It's getting better.
but it's not a substitute.
But we can't depend on the way the world was yesterday. So we have to move forward into the new world, and we are doing that. We had an incredible studio visit with several artists on Zoom.
But I beg you, look at it on Zoom, find it on Zoom, but make the effort to see the real object, whether it's this month or next month. Thank goodness the vaccine is catching hold. Every person who thinks of themselves as a collecting art should get the vaccine as soon as possible, just for the privilege of being able to look at real art again.
That's a good message. It's a good message. The other message is being a collector is a privilege. And it's interesting that everyone can be a collector. It's a question of prioritizing, making, and think about how much more creativity there would be in the world if everyone felt like, yeah, regardless of my budget, I can create a way to collect art and bring the original artwork into your home. So I think if that message goes out, it makes so much more opportunity for artists around the world, and especially artists right in your community. Oh, I do want to mention that, you know, we're always running around all over the world, and sometimes maybe we're a little bit, let's say, sometimes you miss what's right in your backyard. And we just found an incredible young artist who grew up in Overtown by the name of Reginald O'Neill, and amazing. And maybe we would have missed him with all our, with all our travel. And so we refocused on galleries right here in Miami. And this artist is incredible, really, really incredible. And I'm so grateful. I think if it wasn't for this pandemic, we might have missed them, because, you know, when you travel, and also, you can miss what's in your backyard. So yeah, Reginald O'Neill, we can't wait to show his work. He had his first exhibition at, right here. And it's really great.
That's such a great note to end on, actually.
Anthony Spinello Gallery, young, actually he's young, but he's been showing, I think, almost 15 years already, right under our nose. And we never really committed to any artists that he showed before. And here we walk into a show. We did ask him, and he generously allowed us to visit without, being alone with our masks. And, so we looked at the work and we were blown away by it. So,
But it was real.
So yeah, sometimes this is an opportunity to really check out the artist right in your own backyard, because you can't travel. So okay, so that's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll find an opportunity to collect no matter what.
I feel like that is the case. Thank you again, Mera and Don, for your time and your extremely generous and inspiring discussion today. And also a big thank you to Juan and team from the Rubell Museum for these wonderful images that you've provided us, so that attendees can take a peek into the collection virtually. To our friends,
I want to say, please stay well, stay safe, and let's hope to see each other very soon.
Absolutely.
Thank
to our friends tuning in from Miami.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The Rubell Museum is open to visitors, so more information on visiting exhibitions and participating in other museum programs can be found on their website, rubellmuseum.org. So on this note, we have now come to the end of our SEAspotlight talk series. Coming up tomorrow, our last day of SEAfocus 2021 is an overseas institutional visit with Museum Machan, where you'll be brought on a guided curator's tour of Melati Suryadarmo's current exhibition at Machan, Why Let the Chicken Run, and you'll be also given an exclusive preview of 2 upcoming shows and Machan's roster. So a very exciting webinar to end our SEAfocus programming. So for more information and updates on SEAfocus, please visit our website, seafocus.sg, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Once again, thank you to our speakers, Mera and Don, who are just about to start their day. And thank you to all our attendees joining us from Singapore, from the States, and everywhere else. Do take care, keep well, as Mera has said, and have a wonderful weekend ahead. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.